So you drafted a bad team. You didn't do your mock drafts, and you didn't listen to people like me that were telling you to do mock drafts and to prepare for the draft. I'm gonna show you how to fix your fantasy team. Alright guys, so you went into the draft and you did what we all do in the draft sometimes. You went out, you said, okay, I'm going to go pick the players that I know fantasy, I know football, I know it's like the back of my hand. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be fine. Well, we all think that the first couple of times we play fantasy football. So when that occurs, you have only a few things to do. And usually every fantasy owner gets the first 2 picks working. Anything that goes beyond that, round 3, round 4, round 5 is when most fantasy owners start to panic, because at this point the draft board is totally different than what they envision the draft board to be. It's different than what the ADPs say it was supposed to be. It's different than all that. You can either do a couple things. You can either panic, or you can continue on with the strategy that you devised and then make certain alterations to it. Most people panic. And then what they end up with is a bad team or a team that they don't feel is very competitive. So I'm going to give you some really quick tips on how to fix that. Well, the first trick is to aggregate your team. Who are your elite players? Who are your good players? Who are the players that are just so-so? Usually, if you have so-so players on your starting lineup, it's usually going to be tight end. It's going to probably be another running back, the other starting running back, or it's going to be your wide out, your other wide out. So you need to think about, what can you do? What can you do? Well, the first thing I like to do is what one guy in my league calls trash for treasure. And that is, you go out and you look for some owner to take your stuff. Take guys that you don't feel are very great, package them up with other guys, and see if you can deal 2 for 1. Now, trash for treasure, you're not going to get elite players with trash for treasure. You might not even get high-end good players for trash for treasure, but you could get middle good players, or guys that I like to say stabilize your team. So maybe it's a Marcus Colston, maybe it's a Andre Johnson, who's most people have ranked as a top 20 wideout this year. So maybe you won't be able to get him, but Marcus Colston's definitely a guy that you can probably get for the right deal. Roddy White, I know he's getting up there in age. I know he hasn't been that spectacular, but these are guys that can come in and at least give you positive points each week. It may not be the booms, but it's better than saying, if you start Brian Hartline and you don't know. You just don't know what you're going to get with this guy. So when you have that, you could package a couple guys. Maybe it's a Torrey Smith and, a couple other players. The big idea is you take 2 players and you trade them for one really good player or one good player. And sometimes that strategy works. If you find yourself kind of bumping up against the fence with that strategy, then the next strategy that is out there is when you look at your elite players and you say, out of this elite players, who can I go out and grab that can be really good or really near elite? So in other words, if I have Dez Bryant and another owner has Jordan Matthews and Andre Ellington, or DeAndre Hopkins or Brandon Cooks and Ellington, maybe if I offer this owner Dez Bryant or Demaryius Thomas, maybe I can have somebody. Maybe I can take one of these guys and say, okay, give me Brandon Cooks and Andre Ellington, and here's Dez or Demaryius Thomas. Then that way you kind of get 2 positions that are really good. Now, obviously, when you do this strategy, you should also try to go after players that have a chance to either exceed what most people have thought, and that would be guys who are like breakout candidates, such as the ones I just talked about: Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Matthews. If you can get those kind of guys, you have a good chance at building your team by trading an elite and getting two very good players. And Andre Ellington will at least come in, or maybe Mark Ingram, or whoever you can try to get with these guys. Maybe they can come in and help solidify your positions that you're off on. Joseph Randle's another possibility. Because they're probably going to be better than what you have right now. And that leads to the last thing that you can do. And I would suggest, if you have a really bad fantasy roster, or you feel that your fantasy roster is not very good, hit that waiver wire. That waiver wire is there to help you guys. It is beyond anything that trades can do for you. But that's why I saved the best for last. If you're in a 10-team league, you have an excellent chance of grabbing at least two guys that could probably start on your team. Because let's face it, we all go through the draft and we all forget guys. And if you have a good team, you probably still want to check the waiver wire just to see if there was any guys that you might have missed. So take an example of New Orleans, Benjamin Watson. This is a guy who's going to be the starting tight end for the New Orleans Saints. He could very well be out there on your waiver wire to grab. If your tight end is not very good, that's a very good candidate right there. Is a Darren McFadden out there? Yes, the Cowboys might be a running back by committee, but that's not a bad back to have. He might be able to come in and help solidify you. These are the rules and these are the possibilities that exist when you don't draft well. And as always, during the season, be very, very, very dedicated to identifying players that have the potential to break out. Right now on your waiver wire, right now in your league, I don't even care if you're in a 12-team league. I don't even care if you're in a 14-team league. There's a good chance that there's at least one player that's a breakout that's on that waiver wire that no one saw coming. A Julius Thomas, a Peyton Hillis, a Steve Smith, the one that used to play for the Giants, not the senior, who plays for the Baltimore Ravens. These are guys that could have those years that just come out of nowhere and people are like, oh my gosh. And if you are mindful of that waiver wire and you are mindful of players that come out, they could be that guy that comes out for you and that you can hit the home run with and really help bring value to your roster. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to build value. And unfortunately, right now, if you have a team that you're not very happy with, right now that value is something that you need to incorporate. Lastly, on that waiver wire, check for rookies. Check for your David Cobbs, your Devin Funches, your Devontae Parkers. These may not be anything spectacular, but they could be guys that as the year goes on, they could be guys that start to break out. I mean, they were drafted in the first round for a reason, some of these guys. If they're out there on your team, you should definitely take a look at that and for the waiver wire. Secondly, look for breakout players that are in their second years. Guys like Andre Williams from the New York Giants. These are guys that were rookies last year that didn't do spectacular as rookies, but could definitely do something with another year under their feet. So you could get a Bishop Sankey or David Cobb. I mean, these are guys that you could get that are out there. By no means am I saying that these strategies that I presented to you are bona fide ways that you could win, but they are ways that give you value to your team, and they are ways to get you in a chance to improve your roster. And at the end of the day, that's all you can really do when you have a bad draft. Sometimes you're done in by your draft, and sometimes you're augmented by what you do on the waiver wire, because let's face it, the fantasy, you have 12 weeks in a normal fantasy season to really make the playoffs and to really make your push. So it's not a 1 week thing. It's a marathon, not a race. So be mindful of that. Don't get down on yourself if you had a bad draft. Everybody has at least one stinky draft that they've done in their life. Yours truly. just take some of the advice I've given you today, apply it. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you say, Matt, you didn't really address what I have exactly going on with my team, please drop a comment down there. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll be more than happy to help you with any of your fantasy football needs. And as always, develop your strategy, draft your team, and dominate your league. Alpha Fantasy Sports. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.